there, and welcome to Dr. No Hatfield Online. Can I ask, as always, that you open up a Bible with me, and you can open it to the book of John, fourth book in the New Testament. We are back at the book of John. First round, we were looking at it from this angle of asking, what would it mean to come and see, experience Jesus for yourself? John, who walked with Jesus, he penned this incredible good news, this gospel according to John. And this was his reason for writing it. John 20, verse 31, he says, many other signs were performed in the presence of the disciples, but these are written, these actions and words, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have what? Religion, doctrine, dogma, tradition, you may have life in his name. We've been saying that this is not just any kind of life. This is Zoe life. This is not just bios. This is Zoe, the God quality kingdom life of God. It's not just about going to heaven one day. It's about the God quality kingdom minded life that originates in the love of Jesus for us on the cross. Living a life that is focused on the gospel and its purposes for me. Knowing and living from our identity in Jesus for the things of the Father through the power of the Spirit, its fullness of life. This is one of the greatest themes in the book of John, and that's why we're calling this second part of the book of John, we're calling this series More Life. Just listen to how often, more than 40 times, let me just give you a smattering of some of these life verses in this book. He says, a thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. I'm the good shepherd, and the shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I give them life eternal. They will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. I am the way, the truth, and the life. This is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and the one that you have sent, Jesus Christ. There is so much more to be found in Jesus. Let's discover together. So last time we left it when Jesus engaged with this woman who had been caught in adultery. Let's pick it up now in John 8, verse 12. Jesus spoke to them again. I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So the Pharisees said to him, you are testifying about yourself. Your testimony is not valid. Even if I testify about myself, Jesus replied, my testimony is true, because I know where I come from and I know where I'm going. But you do not know where you've come from or where you are going. You judge by human standards. I judge no one. And even if I do judge, my judgment is true, because it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. Even in your law, it is written that the testimony of two witnesses is true. I am the one who testifies about myself, and the Father who sent me testifies about me. Then they asked him, where is your Father? You know neither me nor my Father. Jesus answered, if you knew me, you would also know my Father. He spoke these words by the treasury while teaching in the temple. But no one sees them because his hour had not yet come. He said to them again, I am going away, and you will look for me, and you will die in your sin. Where I'm going, you cannot come. Verse 25. Who are you? They question. Exactly what I've been telling you from the very beginning. Jesus told them, I have many things to say and to judge about you, but the one who sent me is true, and what I have heard from him, these things I tell the world. They did not know that he was speaking to them about the Father. And so Jesus said to them, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own. But just as the Father taught me, I say these things. The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, because I always do what pleases him. And he was saying, as he was saying these things, many believed in him. Powerful. Now, there's so many other passages of the scripture that we could have further gone into. Jesus says, the truth you will know, and it will set you free. There's this whole other passage. If you're a sports fan, maybe if you're a soccer fan, you've got Messi on your wall. If you're a tennis fan, you've got Djokovic on your wall. If you're a rugby fan in South Africa, maybe you've got the long blonde locks of Faf and his Speedo on your wall. But if you're a young Jewish man, you had Abraham on your wall. And Jesus, later in this passage, goes on to say, before Abraham was, I am. And so many things to dig in, but we have to make choices. Otherwise, we're going to be preaching through this book for a year. So I want us to focus on this crazy statement Jesus made. I am the light of the world. Now, Robert Withnow, he is seen as probably one of the most prominent sociologists of religion in the world. He's teaching at Princeton University in the US, and he recently wrote a book called After Heaven. And in it, he makes this really compelling argument that I think is right. And he says that younger generations especially, maybe older and younger millennials and Gen Y and Z specifically, they are so dissatisfied with the options given to them as to how to find purpose, meaning, identity in life. And so what at one stage for a couple of decades really sufficed for people, scientism, not just science as a tool to know the world, but science as my worldview. All I need is science and rationality, and now I can live a fulfilled life. And they're saying, no, it's not enough. Science cannot answer the questions deep in my heart. If you try and use science to simply answer things like, who am I, and why am I here, and where am I going, and what am I meant to do, and what's my identity, and my worth, and my purpose, it's like brushing teeth with a hammer. It's not the right tool for the job. But they are just as dissatisfied with this kind of wonky, just spiritualism, where it's just love and the universe and just positive thinking. It's not enough. But they're also dissatisfied with traditional religiosity and dogma and just moralism. Just be a good person. And into all of this dissatisfaction, I believe John comes and he says, I'm not going to introduce you to simply a way or a philosophy, not even just a religion, but I want to introduce you to a person. In fact, the person who will speak to your soul in a way that you've never experienced before. There is more life to be found in him when he says, I am the light of the world that you are looking for. But it doesn't really sound shocking to us, that statement, until we dig into the context. So 3 things I want us to look at today. Just first up is the beauty and the horror of this image that Jesus creates for them. So let's read together. He says, I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. What do we know in the modern age that maybe the original hearers did not understand as well? And that is that light is both a wonderful and a terrifying thing. Light is wondrous and it's horrendous. Why? Because let's look at the positive side first. Light gives us life. It gives us truth and joy. It gives us life. There is no life outside of the light that we receive from the sun. If we lose the sun, it's over. Our food supply is done. We are done. Everything is dead. Even plants, you'll see it, they grow. They urge themselves in the direction of the sun for photosynthesis. We've got these creeper kind of vine plants at our house, and they literally expend energy to get to where the sun is. Without the sun, without light, we have no life. But secondly, light also brings us the truth. If the light is switched on, suddenly, these light particles, they rebound off of these objects and they enter into my retina. And now I can see. I have something of understanding. I have something of, I can gauge myself in the environment. I have context. One of our good friends just recently, she was going to their kids in the evening. They've got 2 kids, and one of them, night terrors, crying. It's all this, emotion happening. And as she runs into their room, she doesn't realize that there's this wooden stool there, and she smacks her foot into it and breaks her toe. So, all your toes on your foot saying, let's go this way, guys. And this one toe says, I'm going to go this way. Broken toe. Why? Because there's no light. So light brings us truth, but it also brings us joy. It's been shown so many times that researchers who have to have these extended periods of time at the poles, north or south, they always end up battling with depression and anxiety because of a lack of sunlight. Podcast that I love listening to, the Huber Lab scientific podcast, and often the author and the originator of this podcast would say that if you want to dig into sleep science, one of the best things you can do is early in the morning get into the sun for 20 minutes, because we receive our joy from the sun, from light. And so this is the paradox, though. Yes, light brings us life and truth and joy, but the paradox is, yes, light is wonderful, but it's also horrendous. It's terrifying. It can take life and truth and joy from us. Why? When unmediated light makes contact with us, it's dangerous. Think about this. Yes, light gives me life, but if unmediated light, we're always arguing about the ozone layer, but we know this, the less of that we have covering us as a planet, if you are not, shielded with the ozone, you are fried. If we were to lose that covering, the sun would toast us, our oceans would disappear, the deserts would just overrun us, our food supply would be done, you and I would be shish kebabs. But secondly, yes, light can give us truth, but it can also rob us of that truth. Why is it true that, if you think about all those survival shows that Bear Grylls often takes his celebrity guests on, always if they are on the coldest places of the earth or the deserts, what does he say to them? The first thing, before food, shelter, anything else, you need to make sure you have in place is what? Sheltering your eyes, covering your eyes, because the light from the sun that hits and reflects from either the desert or the snow, the ice, it will fry your retinas. So yes, we receive truth from light, but it can, if unmediated light were to reach us, man, it hurts us, it robs us of our sight. For all the millennials out there, who remembers the movie Deep Impact, right? I think the reason why some of you are like, it rings a bell, but I don't know, is because in that same summer, same plot, same basically, premises, 2 movies come out, Deep Impact and Armageddon. And of course, both movies, same plot, no one could resist Bruce Willis and young Ben Affleck, not even old sad Ben Affleck, young Ben Affleck in his prime, and Aerosmith singing, come on, don't want to close my eyes, I don't want to fall. I can't sing it, but man, Steven Tyler, you couldn't resist. So everyone knows Armageddon. But Deep Impact, same story, this asteroid, this meteorite coming to Earth, and they have to go up and destroy this thing. And there's this horrific moment in the story. As they're about to leave, one of these astronauts, these scientists, he forgets to put his UV visor over, shielding his face, and he just sees the sun. Suddenly, he's turned toward it in its fullness, and his face is just boiled. His sight is just robbed of him. So light is a wonderful thing. It gives us life and truth and joy. But thirdly, it can also rob us of our joy. Let's be honest, all of us in the right lighting, soft lighting, we look like rock stars, like models, isn't it? Right lighting, soft lighting with a good Instagram filter, we all look beautiful. But have you ever been to, a shopping center or a retail space or the right kind of bathroom in someone's home, and they've got those ring lights around it that exposes your skin? If you come closer to that mirror, you're like, what is this hideous creature whose skin looks like the moon, just like full of holes? It's scary. So yes, we can receive joy from light, but it can also rob us of it. And I think, just to maybe make it a bit more serious, how often is it that us as human beings, when we are actually brought into the light, emotionally, spiritually, physically, how horrifying is it to see ourselves in a true moment of life, when I've made a decision, when I've dropped someone that I said I would never do, when I've crossed a line I thought I would never cross, when I'm just alone with my own thoughts, when I am exposed to myself, it's often horrifying. I had a friend from school who, before becoming a Christian, he almost had to be, just as a university student, drunk 3 to 4 times a week. Because he said the biggest challenge for him was, if he were alone, not drinking out with friends, he had to face himself. Jesus says, this light that he is, we know that it can give us life, truth, joy, but it can also rob us of it. And here Jesus says, I am the light. Now, why is that so powerful? Here's the second thing. Because we need to understand the shocking nature of this announcement that he makes. Now, read with me. He says in verse 20, he spoke these words by the treasury while teaching in the temple, but no one seized him. Now, that's such a strange statement. Why did John add that? No one seized him. No one grabbed him as he was speaking in the temple. And it's because John knows something that we don't know without the context. And if we knew it like he did and his Jewish audience did, you would be so surprised that people didn't just go up and just choke Jesus out for this crazy statement that he made. How do we get to the context? So the first question is, where and when was Jesus saying what he was saying? So look with me in the Bible. It says in verse 12, Jesus spoke to them again I am the light of the world. So the word again is saying that we need to go back into the passage, scroll, get off of WhatsApp and get back into your Bible app and scroll back a bit. Because then we're going to see in chapter 7 that it's saying that Jesus is in fact saying these things on the last evening of the Feast of Tabernacles. He's in Jerusalem, he's at the temple, and it's in this prominent feast. As an agrarian society, obviously the Israelites and the Jewish people, they had these prominent festivals throughout the year to commemorate certain things of their history. And this Tabernacle Festival, the Festival of Tabernacles, it commemorated remembrance. This moment where God not only saved the Israelites out of Egypt, but he led them into the desert. And that, extended season of wandering in the desert meant that they did not have homes. There was no crop. There was no harvest. So it was a time then now, this festival, to remember these things. So the outward expressions of the festival would bring them back to God's provision. So first up, they would have these massive bowls of water they would pour out in these temple spaces to signify the fact that when they were in the desert and they were parched and they were struggling, as Moses struck the rock, there was water just pouring out to come and give them sustenance, to give them satisfaction. But secondly, during this festival, they would actually create these little booths for themselves, these little thatched housing to say, listen, remember the time that we did not even have a place to stay, to rest. But here's the most important one. At the end of each of these evenings, they would light these massive candles, candle holders, basically. These gigantic candle spaces. And they say that these were so impressive. I mean, think about it. This is a time where you didn't have electricity. So the evening times were dark, most of it. So suddenly you have, and reports say these big candle holders would be lit and parts of the city would just be lit up. Just light emanating everywhere. They were commemorating the fact not only that God had rescued them from Egypt, but what did he do in the desert when they got there? He led them. How did this happen? Well, it's the strange thing is as the Israelites come out of the Red Sea, there is this cloud. Seems like a pillar almost made of cloud. And in the evenings, as they were following this cloud, being guided by it, as it would become darker, this cloud would begin to emanate light. It would begin to almost burn. And in the darkest part of the night, it would be like this pillar of fire. And they would be led by it. If they were chased by the Egyptian soldiers, this pillar of fire destroyed them. When they had to move around, whenever this pillar of fire moved, they moved with it. They were guided by it. And even when they built the tabernacle for God's presence, this pillar of fire just ascended upon it. Now, what was this cloud, this pillar? Exodus 13:21 says this, the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to lead them on their way during the day and in a pillar of fire to give them light at night. This was not just some random miracle. This was God himself. This was his manifest light presence. He himself came to rescue them. He himself came to guide them, to protect them. And therefore, the worst moment of the Feast of Tabernacles was on the final evening, when they would not light these massive candle holders. Why? Because they were signifying the fact that God's presence had never again since that time. For centuries, it had not manifested in that way. Like the prophet Ezekiel would say, Ichabod, the glory is gone. The manifest glory of God has not filled this space, this temple like it did in centuries. It's this horrendous moment. Think about Christmas time. What's the worst moment in Christmas? It's when you have to start packing up all the decorations. Suddenly it's like the tree's going down. I need to go on a diet again, get all this holiday flab off my body. Who wants the new year? It sucks when you have to put away all these things because it signifies something. It's an emotionally low moment. Well, for these Israelites, the lowest of the low moments. Man, this Feast of Tabernacles, this music and people and the water and the light and these booths and fellowship. It's beautiful. And this last evening, you stand there and these candle holders are not lit and it's just dark and it's cold. It's a reminder of the fact that we do not have what we used to have. And it's in this moment. It says Jesus in John 7:37, on the last night and most important day of the festival, Jesus stood up and he cried out. And he starts speaking. And what does he say in our passage? In this place of darkness, in this place of desperate longing, Jesus stands up in the cold and the dark and he says, in front of these candle holders, I am the light of the world. Even that thing that you used to long for, it was imperfect. It was just partial. It was just a placeholder. Now the glory of God has come. The thing that you most dearly want, I am here. That's a massive, now you can imagine why Jewish people would go and say, how dare you? How dare you say something so blasphemous? And moreover, not only does he make that statement, he says, come, follow this light. He says, guess what? The glory light of God has come to earth and it's moving. Follow it. Now, what does that mean? It means that Jesus is saying that longing that you have, that the light of your life that brings truth, that brings life, that brings joy, he says, I am the ultimate life, truth, and joy. First up, he says, I am the ultimate truth. I alone can bring you truth. If you are fed up with religiosity and moralism, trying to be a good person, trying to fit in, trying to impress those around you, if you're fed up with just the squishiness of just spirituality. I was listening to Zachary Levi on a podcast the other day. Great guy, actor and Shazam, and he looks like a genuine oak. But the moment he speaks about faith and spirituality, he just has this fluffy language of saying, God is just the love of all around me and just emanating goodness to the universe and to nature. You're like, that does not answer the deep longings of my heart. No, Jesus says, I alone can bring you life. As the winter recedes and the light breaks in and growth starts, Jesus says, when you don't simply allow me close to you as just a good moral teacher or as an example, but if you let me into your life and you into my presence, he says, light will burst through. St. Irenaeus, the glory of God is man fully alive. Jesus says, you will be fully alive only in me. But secondly, he says, I'm the source of ultimate truth. People say, where does Jesus say that he is God? Man, do you see in the Jewish context? Here Jesus stands in front of these candle holders in this last day of the festival. Here he says, the glory of God has been missing in our hearts. Here I am. What is he saying? He's saying you cannot understand God apart from me. If you're a young person listening to me, hear me when I say there is no more important question than this. If there is a God, who is he and what is he like? If there is no God, then guess what? You came from nothing, you're going to nothing. Life ultimately means nothing. Whatever life you live, you can make meaning for yourself, but it will, in the heat days of the universe, mean absolutely nothing. But if there is a God, man, I want to know what that means, because he will be able to tell me who I am, what I'm here for, what true joy and purpose and identity means. And Jesus comes and he says, you do not have to go to the outermost parts of the earth to find a philosophy or truth. You don't have to pray and chant and go on some pilgrimage to find it out there. He says, I will show you God. If you want to answer the question of identity, purpose, of life, more life, it has to start with Jesus. And please hear me, he's not saying that no other philosophy or religion or person have aspects of the truth. Because I believe just the general revelation of God, His abundant grace means that we find aspects of his imagery all over the earth. But what Jesus is saying is that all these other religions and philosophies and good teachers and people, they are like the moon. Yes, they reflect an aspect of the light, and that's good, but I am the sun. And yes, you can see much under the light reflected from the moon, but the sun is the real deal. I am the truth that you need. That's why Hebrews 1:3 says, the Son, Jesus, is the radiance of God's glory the exact expression of his nature. You want to find joy, life, purpose, identity? Look to Jesus. But thirdly, he says, I am the ultimate joy. I'm the ultimate beauty. He's asking you literally, if you want to have a beautiful lover in your life, if you want to strive to have a beautiful body, if you want to spend quite a bit of money to go to beautiful places, if you long to just listen to beautiful music and experience beautiful things on screen, those are good things. But they will never truly satisfy the deepest longings of your soul. They are but moons, showing us aspects of who God is. And all of us have experienced this. There's a moment of ecstasy in your life with people on a trip somewhere, out in nature. You're experiencing something one evening just fills you with so much joy. There's a moment you're listening to music, you're watching a movie, and it so fills you with emotion. You think, man, if I can just feel like this all the time, but it goes away. It's like a glimpse and it's gone. And it's because Jesus says, as beautiful as all those moons of experience and beauty is, you will only find true satisfaction in me. It's a massive statement that he's making. So what do? You say, okay, well, I guess a bit of Jesus in my life wouldn't hurt. No. Listen to what C.S. Lewis says in The Weight of Glory. He says, God has given us the morning star already. Yes, you can go and enjoy the gift of a sunrise on many fine mornings if you're ready to get up early enough. What more, you may ask, do we want? Oh, but we want so much more. We do not merely want to see the beauty. We want something else which we can hardly put into words. We want to be united with the beauty we see. We want to pass into it. We want to receive it in ourselves. We want to bathe in it. And that's why when Jesus in John chapter 8 verse 12 says, listen, if you follow me, you will have light in you. That thing that Moses and the Israelites never could fully grasp on the mountain, that which C.S. Lewis says you cannot go without, Jesus says you will have it in me. Why? Because Jesus, in the Old Testament, whenever God would fully reveal himself, his glory, it would just fry the people. But here Jesus says he's our mediator. It's not the unmediated light of God. It's mediated through Jesus in two ways. The first is in his incarnation, God become man. Now we can see God, touch God, hear God. I mean, think about it. If you saw the pillar of fire as an Israelite, you looked at it and you were like, wow. But that's basically it. But if you see Jesus, if you see him healing the sick, if you see him resurrecting the dead, if you see him speaking about the kind of identity and life and purpose you were made for, if you hear him speaking about a kingdom of love and truth and hope coming into our world, reforming our world, taking us into the new creation, if you see him treating the lowly and the broken and the rebellious with such grace and such truth, if you see that Jesus dying on a cross, God come to this earth to take our sin upon a cross, man, you look at that Jesus and you're not just wowed, you are taken in. The mediated light of God in a man now says, come, follow me. But secondly, it's not just that the Israelites could not handle the full expression of God's glory because they were too weak, but it's because of our sin. Because of our rebellion, our filth, our shame, our rejection of God. God says, I am light, and in my light there is no darkness. These two things can never go together. How would we ever come to God? We walk around with shame and guilt and pain. We break ourselves and those around us at every turn. What can we do? And it's in this moment where God comes in the person of Jesus. And what does he do? Does he judge? Does he break us? Does he cast us away? No. There's a moment where Jesus takes his closest three, Peter, James, and John, Luke 9, he takes them up on this mountain. It's called the Transfiguration often. And suddenly, like the pillar of fire started emanating light, Jesus starts emanating light to the point where his face, his whole body is just this glowing, pure light. The disciples are blown away. They can't believe it. What's happening right now? And then, just to make it even worse, suddenly these legends of the Old Covenant, Moses and Elijah are there. They're conversing with Jesus. And listen to the word that they use. When they speak about, in your English translation, they'll speak about Jesus going away, his next season. But in the Greek, they use the word his exodus. When is your exodus happening? Yes, the Israelites had an exodus from Egypt. But when is the exodus happening? The exodus, they ask him. And what does Peter do? He gets it in that moment. He says, listen, can I make booths for us? Can we camp around here like the Festival of Tabernacles? Why? Because he recognizes, as we used to now celebrate the exodus and the next phase of the journey with God's presence, the true exodus has come. Because Jesus is the final lamb that was slain to paint his blood over the door of your life so that you would find life. He is the water breaking apart from the rock for us. He was struck so that the water of real flowing life would come into us. He was the manna in the desert broken apart for us so that we could feed off of his life. He is the light that became the darkness of our sin, death, and rebellion on the cross, that took the enemy's scheming, death itself, upon him. He lived the life that you and I should have lived, and he died the death that you and I should have died so that he could reclaim our identity as mankind, rewrite our story, recapitulate the story of mankind as the true Israelite, as the true human being. He came to show us with his hands, beckoning us to a new life and keeping us in a place where sin no longer rules over us. He came to show us with the head of victory that he had proclaimed, victory over death, victory over Satan. And at the heart of what he was doing, he came to substitute himself, to take the punishment of sin upon himself. He did this so that we could experience the fullness of God's glory in us. So lastly, can I just say that there is an invitation, there's such a freedom in the invitation that Jesus makes. Can I just speak to you, if you're a Christian and maybe you're not sure, just two invitations to you. What does it mean as a Christian to live in this invitation? It means you don't live for the light, to impress the light, to earn the light. It means you live from the light, from the acceptance and love of Jesus. Believe in the life, death, and resurrection of what he's done, and live from the transformative light that, almost like the moon, just comes to reflect off of you. And how do you do that? First up, live in the light. Many of you hearing me today, you are hiding things from your spouse, from your employer, from yourself. Come into the light. The way that you are just isolating yourself at the moment, trying to fix yourself in the dark, nothing but bitterness and isolation is going to grow there. Come into the light. You are made for it. You are made, remade, reborn in the light of Jesus. Secondly, live attractively. What is different about us as Christians? It's not simply winning the lottery and having life as we wanted. That shows God's goodness. No, it's when cancer strikes my marriage and I suffer through it differently, with a different joy, with a different hope, with a different set of lenses for my life. It's when I'm struck by the politics and the petrol price and just the rampant crime and corruption in our country, and I'm saying I'm not going to run away. If God has called me to be in this country for this time, I will live with that kind of hope. I will shine His light. Thirdly, is to live courageously. You need to shine your light in such a way that people say, stop it, you're going to expose us. When everyone in your sector, everyone in your business, in your company say, listen, you just keep your mouth shut and we do it this way. This is how everyone does it. We have to cut these corners. That's how we make money. You say, I cannot do that. I live reflecting the light. And if they say, you stop shining that light, you stop doing that, you're going to make us look bad, you're going to expose us, you charge forward. When people are making racist jokes and racist comments and indicting each other on the color of their skin and their histories and their character, you say, I cannot do that. I will not stand for a country like that because I live from the perspective of the light, of a multi-ethnic church going into the new creation. When there's temptation in your life to say, come on, it's just a little bit of this, just a little bit of the bed and the bottle and the business, just sex and status and money, and just live for these things. You say, no, because I live reflecting the identity of Jesus, the identity given to me by my Father in the power of the Holy Spirit. Lastly, live hopefully. Yes, the sun that is Jesus has risen. It's begun to rise, but it's not fully risen yet. There is a time coming in the new creation when all the tears will be wiped away. So yes, I live with a different hope. I live as if this is not the full story. I will not invest my time and treasures and talents as if this is all there is, as if the one of the most toys in the end wins. No, I'm going to live with an eternal perspective in the good times and in the bad. And if you're not a Christian, you're unsure, can I just challenge you, invite you with this? You say, how will I know if this is taking root in my life? It's like the light, we said when winter recedes and the light comes in, you see that growth taking root suddenly. If you experience that growth in the smaller sense, just beginning, I want to tell you, press in. Jesus is coming for you. He wants to save you, redeem you, show you abundant life. But here's the two things that I think can happen when you experience that. Either it's beautiful and you're starting to realize, what could it mean to follow Jesus, to be a child of God, to be renewed, forgiven, restored, or it's terrifying. What would it mean if He were my King, my God? And I want to say in both those cases, press in. He will not even break the softest, the most brittle of reed. Let Jesus tell you who He is. But the one thing you cannot do is be indifferent. Jesus, that's good enough. No. Jesus, good man, historical figure, probably a good dude, said some good things, but not for me. That's the one thing that you will not find any hope in. Jesus says, I am the light that brings life, truth, and joy. Seek Him. Believe in Him and let Him come and be more life on your behalf, for you, in you, and through you.